The quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our habit. Have you ever wondered why you don't seem to be able to change, although you want it really badly? To have money, to learn something? Well, the answer is in this book. And it has the potential to change your life dramatically. And because I'm also going to refer to this book a lot on this channel, let's take a closer look. We'll go through this in 4 parts: the role of habits in our life, goals, systems and compound interest, facts about habits, and finally how we can change habits. So let's start with the role of habit. There is this common misconception that we make a big change in our life right now and then it'll change forever. But James Clear says that our situation today is actually the result of our habits of the last year. Your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habit. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habit. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning habit. Your clutter is a lagging measure of your cleaning habit. You get what you repeat. We all want at least one thing, most of the time several things in our lives. And we create this desire in our mind, but unless we put it into action, it stays but this, a desire. And a habit is about action. It is about the action, the necessary action to achieve what you want. And because 40 to 50% of our daily actions are based on habits, it seems a good idea to pay more attention to them. Because learning about them and actively forming them can lead to remarkable results. And in the end, it's just these little steps every day. Which brings us to part 2. Goals, systems and compound interest. James says you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And although I do not 100% agree with what James says about goals, for example, he says that they're only momentarily and that they restrict our happiness. I think that depends on the kind of goals we set for ourselves and which role we attach to them. But we will not dive into that now. I agree 100% with what he says about implementing systems. So basically every habit is a part of a bigger picture. You can imagine it as a little piece of a puzzle. And especially for long-term life-defining things, it's actually not about things you do for a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. It's rather what you do over years and decades. James says that the most powerful outcomes are delayed and habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Us implementing those little things every day will actually compound over time. Now the tricky thing with compound interest is that you put in the work, you take the action, but for a long time you will see almost no changes or only very little results. James calls this the plateau of latent potential, and that is also the reason why it can get really hard to build lasting habits, to stick with them once we decided on them, because we don't see an instant result and then we stop. But the big results come after a long period of time. And James Clear says here that time acts as a magnifier. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Good habits make time your ally, bad habits make time your enemy. And building a system is actually nothing else than implementing good habits despite on seeing results on them or not. Because we already know that the results will come, just probably not anytime soon. So now let's talk about some facts about habits. A habit is an automated action. You know, to solve a problem, our brain needs a lot of mental power. And mental power means energy. And our body is programmed to save energy. So for problems that repeat itself, our brain learns and only the useful actions will stay. And those useful actions are then transformed into habits. So the process of this useful action gets automated, and that is how we form a habit. And then because it's an automated process, you don't have to think about if you're doing something. It saves our brain energy and frees up mental capacity. So actually the more habits you form, the more you can concentrate on important tasks. And here's one of my favorite quotes from the book. There are no good habits or bad habits. There are only effective habits. That is, effective at solving problems. All habits serve you in some way, even the bad ones, which is why you repeat them. And this is crucial to understand. We call something bad habits because they lead to a result we don't want. For example, if you make eating junk food your habit in certain situations, it will lead to weight gain. Same if you're laying on the couch instead of exercising, or smoking, or spending every penny of your salary. All of those things are like good for us in the short term, which is why we do them in the first place. You also might heard of this as instant gratification, but they are obviously bad for us in the long term. How are habits actually formed? There are 4 parts in building a habit. The first one is cue. The cue triggers your brain to initiate behavior. Now, cues can be all sorts of things. Most of the time our senses are involved. For example, if you see something, or if you hear something, for example, if you hear a noise that reminds you of something sweet, that might trigger your brain to want to eat something sweet. The next part is craving. Now, the craving is some kind of desire that actually motivates you to do the action. And you don't actually crave the thing, you crave the change in your state. To stay with the sweets example, you want to eat chocolate because it satisfies you in some kind of way. The third step then is the response, and that is the actual action. So for example, you walking into the kitchen straight to the secret sweets closet. And then the final step is the reward, and that is kind of the end goal of habits. It's either satisfaction or learning. So you eat the chocolate, endorphins are released, and then you're happy or satisfied, or both. So obviously all of those 4 parts are important, but the reward especially so. James writes, your brain is a reward detector. As you go about your life, your sensory nervous system is continuously monitoring which actions satisfy your desires and deliver pleasure. Feelings of pleasure and disappointment are part of the feedback mechanism that helps your brain distinguish useful actions from useless ones. And this comes back to the saving energy goal, because there's no point in repeating useless actions. And also when it comes to the response, it depends on how strong the craving is, how much friction there is, and also your ability. And that brings us to our next point, how to actually change habits. Now, habits are especially formed through repetition, and things we repeated for 1,000 times are actually quite hard to change. Then we also have to repeat the changed behavior also for 1,000 times. There are 3 layers of changing our habit, and you can imagine them as a circle. Now, the outer circle is our outcomes. That is when we concentrate on the results. For example, I want to save 10,000 in the next couple of months. Then the next layer is the process. When we focus on the process, then we might, for example, implement it as, okay, I'm going to save 30% of my income as of now. That way I will not just save the 10,000 because I implemented a system, saving the 30% every month. And if I continue doing that, I'll be saving much more than the actual intended 10,000. And the third layer is identity. And identity means what you actually believe about yourself and also about others. And James says a conflict of identity is actually the biggest obstacle of changing a habit and therefore achieving something. To stay with the money example, if your family is from the working class, so your parents and their parents and their parents and their parents were all working class, but you set yourself an outcome of reaching 5 million in the next 20 years, this is probably going to be hard for you, because when you grew up in a working class family, suddenly wanting to become a millionaire might cause a conflict in identity. James writes, the more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will be to maintain the habits associated with it. So now, how do we actually change our identity? Well, first on, you decide what you want to be, and then you change what you do. And this changing of our actions also leads to trust with ourselves that we actually can do the thing, and over time it builds new evidence and therefore a new belief system. Now, related to the 4 processes of habit forming, there are also 4 ways in changing a habit. The first one is make it obvious. That is to create awareness and to also maybe use environmental design. If you want to drink more water, instead of having to go to the kitchen and fill up a glass, just put a big bottle right next to you wherever you are. So then it's very obvious because it's standing right there, you can see it all the time, and it also reduces friction. The second way is to make it attractive. For example, every time you do something that excites you, you can pair it with something that you want to do but have not established yet. James calls this temptation bundling. You can also make something attractive through imitation by surrounding yourself with people where the thing you want to achieve is actually the normal outcome. So if you want to learn more or something specific, you can surround yourself with people who also want to learn the thing. And sometimes the making attractive can be as simple as the wording. For example, instead of saying, I have to go to work now, why don't you change it into, I get to go to work now? These little things can actually have a big impact on how we perceive things. So third step is make it easy. Remember that your body, especially your brain, always wants to save energy. So for example, you can follow the 2-minute rule, which means that every new habit should take less than 2 minutes to do. If you want to read more, start with 1 minute, no problem. Showing up here is actually more important than the duration of the thing. You can reduce friction. So for example, I have my yoga mat always laying on the ground. So if I want to do a workout, it doesn't require me to prepare anything. We can also use friction to our advantage. For example, to add friction to something that we don't want anymore. For example, if you want to eat less sugar, just don't keep anything of it in the house. Therefore, you would have to leave the house and go to a supermarket, which is much more friction than, just going to the secret closet. And the fourth way, make it satisfying. You can implement habits with rewards, but also you can do the opposite and avoid habits through punishment. That is an important mechanism. James writes, what is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. You learn what to do in the future based on what you were rewarded for doing or punished for doing in the past. Positive emotions cultivate habits, negative emotions destroy them. Now, make sure though that the reward is appropriate. For example, if you want to lose weight, you shouldn't reward yourself with food. If you want to get in shape, you shouldn't punish yourself with doing sports. By the way, if you want to check out the book, you'll find a link to it in the video description. If you want to know about bad habits to avoid around the topic of money, check out this video next. Subscribe if you like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.